Information is a key issue in BPOs and IT, and the topic of security, physical security of data systems, data networks, and the protection of personal data has the constant care and attention of all parties involved. Customers who put an enormous pressure on the vendors to have everything in place, service providers, consumers, even through their consumer organizations, and also governments, including the European Commission. They all have a strict focus on data protection and data security, whether from a consumer point of view or a national security point of view. As a lawyer of an international law firm, I'm engaged in advising both customers and providers of services in BPOs and sourcing transactions, especially on data protection and security. And from my role as legal advisor, I know that especially Indian service providers make an enormous effort to comply with standards and regulations on security and data protection. But the question is it enough? Is data protection, are security issues a blockade, or have they an adverse effect on the growth of this industry? I will not further elaborate myself on that, but I leave that to my distinguished panelists, who I now will introduce to you. They will continue this session, and after we've spoken, there will be a possibility for questions later on, which I will introduce. But let me first introduce our panelists. On my left-hand side, my fellow countryman from Holland, Mr. Hans Kolen. He's head of information security of BT Global Services, and in that role responsible for global regulatory security requirements in the territories where British Telecom is active. His team play a crucial role in providing global leadership to regional and in-country security requirements for areas such as data protection and data disclosure. An additional large responsibility is to provide in an external awareness to BT's vast internal security track record, its deliverables and value add, and he will discuss these issues this morning. On my left-hand side, Mr. Rahul Singh. He's the CEO and Managing Director of Citigroup Global Services, and a provider of business process management services to the Citigroup entities worldwide. He's leading these activities. Mr. Rahul's leadership is credited with propelling the company's growth from 300 FTE at the end of the last millennium to nearly 10,000 FTE today, as he is also expanding the company's footprint globally. On my right-hand side, Mrs. Kalpana Ramakrishnan. She's a partner of KPMG, located in California, United States. She's a lead partner of KPMG's sourcing advisory services practice in the United States, which is one of the high growth areas for KPMG, and assists clients throughout the entire sourcing life cycle. Their projects sourcing strategy development, feasibility analysis and business case development, shared services design, implementation, RFP development, vendor selection. These topics which are handled by KPMG and Mrs. Ramakrishnan in particular. So she will go into protection and security aspects of those issues today. Finally, on my right-hand side, Mr. Raman Roy. He's a pioneer and a guru of the Indian BPO industry. He's founder amongst others, of Quattro BPO solutions. And a regular pioneer 3 times over already, and having successfully led captive BPO initiatives of American Express, GE Capital, Wipro BPO, amongst others. That's about the introduction. First of all, I'd like to give the floor to Hans Kolen.
Thank you, Jo. Can you hear me in the back? Okay. I feel small being sitting between these pioneers and your good selves to talk about global security. I feel humble because I think it's a topic that we can continue to discuss for years to come. But I had a very interesting session on Wednesday here at NASSCOM with other panelists to talk about security, and the question was, is India doing enough in terms of IT security? We came to a good conclusion. I'll share the conclusion later on in this session, if I may. But a concern that I had was the definition of security. Now, I'm not going to ask each and every one of you what security means for you, but I hope you would agree with me that if I'm going to ask 20 people, I will probably get 20 or slightly less different definitions. But I will ask you this. Can you all raise your hands if you think security is important for you? Okay, is it probably fair to say that's a vast majority in the room? Okay, with that, I'm going to ask you a very weird question. Can you all, please, without looking left or right, close your eyes? I'm not going to do anything funny, but it's a test to prove a point. Please do so. Can you now point your hand without hitting your neighbor to the next emergency security exit? And if you cannot, please keep your hands down. Well, okay, you can open your eyes now. Thank you. That's interesting because the vast majority of you have said that security is important for you. Yet the most important escape route from this room is not known to the same majority of you. Now, I know it's an unfair test, and there's an element of fun in there, but I'd like to illustrate a point